Mars in Capricorn, reading from the same book here. Mars in Capricorn will correlate to a soul that desires to penetrate and set free all causes of personal inhibitions, constraints, restraints, and repressions. It's interesting because I wouldn't think this to be the first thing that he would say. Mars in Capricorn, he's getting that from the fact that Capricorn typically does have a lot of inhibitions, constraints, restraints, repressions. We associate Capricorn with tradition, and in the world that we live in today, often the Capricorn archetype is expressed through repressions that come from teachings, traditional teachings, religious teachings that constrain and restrain and inhibit a person's free use of their energy. Particularly, we think of sexual energy. But it's not just that. Think of Capricorn as being the drive to get to the top, often associated with the world that we live in today. Because you have to put it in the context of the world that you live in. And the world we live in today, where people have to restrain their behavior, they have to control their behavior, they have to live in a very rigid world in order to fulfill their duties in the workplace, to fulfill their duties through the marriage and the family. So I think where he's getting this from the fact that Mars is exalted in Capricorn, and Mars in the sign Capricorn will challenge this. So again, it says, correlate to a soul who desires to penetrate and set free all causes of personal inhibitions. And I knew a girl who had Mars in Capricorn, and she's the first person that comes to mind. Because you also have to look at the whole chart. When you look at the whole chart, you'll be able to see how this Mars in Capricorn is really expressing itself. And with her, she was a Libra. I didn't have her birth time, but I think she was a Sun and Moon Libra, but she was definitely a Libra Sun. But let's just say she's a Libra, a lot of Libra. She had Venus in Scorpio, she had Mars in Capricorn, and this person still, I would say, has some Capricorn qualities to her. But when you look at the Libra, you look at the Venus in Scorpio, from a relating standpoint, she was very free, and you could definitely say that this rang true for her, that she desired to penetrate all these things, as he mentions here. 'Cause she grew up Catholic. She rebelled against all of those teachings for sure. She was very difficult as a child, very much a problem child. And then as she got older, a lot stronger in her beliefs, and I would say is more on the individuated or spiritual side of things. As such, this placement reflects a soul who desires to unlock the cell door of their inner prison so that the light of personal freedom can shine. Mars is freedom. Mars, break free from the constraints of the consensus, Capricorn. A freedom that is not limited by moralistic or religious conditions that create an uneasy guilt that attempts to control the instinctual impulses that emanate from the soul. Typically, Mars in Capricorn reflects a soul who has had a series of recent lifetimes in which there has been an intense exposure to authoritarian control of man-made religions and the moralistic societies that these religions create, and to the authoritarianism of parents who have been emotionally or sexually repressed. In combination, both forms of constraint upon these souls have produced a deep, permeating anger that has been repressed. Now, if this is the first time you're watching these videos, this guy here, at this point, would have read over 15,000 charts. So he would have seen a lot. He should be referring back to the many charts he would have seen and clients he would have seen and discussed this with who have Mars in Capricorn. In combination, both forms of constraint have also caused the emotional reality of the Mars and Capricorn soul to become locked behind closed doors, emotional denial, and stoicism. Within this, the Mars and Capricorn soul has experienced the double standards or hypocrisy of such authoritarian control and righteousness that what occurs behind the closed doors is an opposition or contradiction to the nature of the religious or moralistic codes of conduct taught by the society, religion, or the parents. I would also say that you can really include this Mars in Capricorn with someone who has aspects, potentially someone who has aspects to Saturn. I have a Mars-Saturn trine within 3 degrees. And really you could say, also I have my Mars-Saturn trine is in a mutual reception. So I went to the same school as this person that I referred to earlier. I had very similar experiences. However, I do not have a sun in Libra, as she does. I think I did have a relatively normal experience with relationships, etc. But there was this Capricorn stuff, and there was this Mars in Capricorn as he's describing it. So I think we can really consider the aspects if you have a Mars-Saturn aspect, a conjunction, opposition, square, the major ones. The duality of double standards conditions such a soul to lead a double life. They learn to present an external behavior and a social persona that is at odds with the nature of their personal life, or what is occurring behind the closed door. And this is essentially what you would see a healthy society, the healthy society that we live in today. I'm not saying it's healthy, but that's what the consensus perceives as the healthy society. The double standards, the double life. That's what most people in the Capricorn life that we live are living out, is the double standard. You can do this, you can do X, Y, and Z in the public, but you cannot do A, B, C. You cannot do what you do behind closed doors in the public. If I said that right. That's a double life. This double life reflects the Mars and Capricorn fear of external judgment and persecution. That's where it comes from, the fear of external judgment and persecution. And if you want to try this for yourself, this will occur most of the time, I'm guessing, especially if you have a lot of Capricorn, or you really live in a Capricorn reality, or a lot of people around you. It's not just sexually speaking either. It's other things. This fear of external judgment and persecution. I mean, just being on YouTube, there's people that have a fear of external judgment, persecution. You do a YouTube channel on, I forget about astrology, but you do a YouTube channel on any topic that's different from your normal life or your normal job, you could be criticized for it. And people have that fear of judgment. They might even have the fear of, well, they're going to think that I don't value my full-time job when they see this. And by me not valuing my full-time job, I could get fired, or think of other consequences that could come from external judgment and persecution. The fear of personal judgment is an extension of the heavy exposure to external conditioning of a highly moralistic religious nature. Thus to act upon the natural impulses or instincts emanating from the soul will typically be in contradiction to the nature of such conditioning. To act upon these instincts will then give rise to the question, what does this mean about me? As a result, this fear creates a psychology of concealment, to conceal their personal truth from others, and even to themselves, because of the question, what does this mean about me? All this creates psychological repression. This in turn creates psychological distortions of all kinds, especially emotional and sexual distortion. Again, the intention of the soul with Mars and Capricorn is to penetrate to the nature of such repressions and distortions, and to totally break free from any source that attempts to control, constrain, or repress any desire leading to the actualization of their individuality that is defined on their own terms. In this way, Mars in Capricorn will actualize its karmic and evolutionary intentions. You think of the Mars in Capricorn person too, like at a very high, courageous level. And the real courageous use of Capricorn is to be the authority, and to take authority and be the authority in this position of taking a stand and standing out, putting yourself out there, and being the authority, meaning you're going to be essentially be the person who fights for this freedom. Which you may see, people in LGBTQ, if I got that right, communities, or just, lesbian communities, gay communities, etc., etc. Any type of like ostracized community. Someone in that group could have a Mars in Capricorn, and they're fighting for their freedom to live out in the open, and not have to hide and live that double life. I mean, this is an interesting discussion. Do you think that there's a problem with living a double life? I think there is. I think that personally, I don't want to live a double life. I think there's psychological repercussions. I mean, they're not life-changing. They're not like life-threatening, I would say. But from a positive standpoint or a feel-good standpoint, self-esteem, etc., even from a social standpoint, I think it's better. Sexually speaking, Mars in Capricorn reflects a soul who desires to break free from all sexual inhibitions, etc., etc., sexual constraints. The repression of natural sexual desires over many lifetimes has created deep sexual emotional anger. Mars, anger at the repressions. By the way, this leads to Aquarius. This will lead to Uranus, where you see someone like me as Moon in Aquarius and Venus in Aquarius, Mars in Aquarius. As life goes on, I see myself being more able to freely express myself and not have to worry or be concerned about what other people think. The anger linked with repression has also created deep distortions of the sexual emotional desires and needs. Because of the desire to unlock these distortions and the closed doors that repress their natural sexual emotional desires and needs, the Mars and Capricorn soul will be highly sexed in this life. I think of that woman that I'm talking about. I think you can look at the rest of the chart and see the Libra, the new moon, the new moon, if it was a new moon, born on a new moon, a Venus in Scorpio, Mars Venus in a balsamic phase. The first lesson for such souls is to accept themselves as sexual beings. When this occurs, the psychology of concealment will be purged and the fear of inner and outer judgment will cease to exist. It's like that movie Meet the Parents. That's what it reminds me of, Meet the Parents, when you have the two different parents. I think the guy's name was Jack. I mean, I don't know if he would have had, maybe he definitely would have had some Capricorn, maybe like Mars and Capricorn. And then you had the other guy's parents who were completely liberated. They were trying to liberate him, even though he wasn't aware of it. He was not going for it. But they insisted that he needed that. And it's interesting to mention that, like, because you would think, okay, well, if you look at his chart and look at the other stuff, maybe he had some Scorpio. But then you look at what he did. I don't know if he worked for the CIA or he was like had all that mystery and hidden stuff. This is where you can see it's like, it's not just if you have Libra, Scorpio, and Mars and Capricorn that's going to be the case, because the Scorpio can play out in other ways, as you saw with him. Maybe he was a secret agent of some sort. As a result of the current life intention, the Mars and Capricorn soul typically attracts partners who are also quite emotionally and sexually fractured, repressed, or crippled in some way. These types of partners, of course, mirror the Mars and Capricorn soul itself because of the intention and instinct to break free, to learn to accept themselves as emotional and sexual beings. The Mars and Capricorn person can attract partners who mirror their own sexual emotional distortion. The manifestations of this can range from sexual violence, which can include being forced to have sex, to various forms of sexual domination and control, to sexual humiliation, and on and on and on. And I think I could tell you more stories about that. That is true from the people that I have, not my own experience, but people that I've seen with Mars, the Mars and Capricorn. And you could think that that's like a really undesirable way of a young person to come into life and have to break free, in a sense, an undesirable way of being forced to break free from these inhibitions or these repressions, coming in as a child, fairly unconscious, and having to experience these things. But that, from a life-to-life perspective, is the theory of how it can occur. Lots to be said about that. Let's see. All too often, Mars and Capricorn must rely on some intoxicant, wine, for example, to unlock and relax its instinctual inhibitions. How many of us have experienced this? I'd say, again, coming back to like the way society is, the majority of people, I think we all could agree, if anyone has any experience in life, that the majority of people need intoxicants to get rid of their inhibitions. They need to get drunk or high. And that happens all day, every day. And that's why you think the bars and the clubs are so popular on the weekends, but the parks and places where you don't drink, there's hardly anyone there. There's no socialization there because people are too repressed and nervous and scared, etc. Once unlocked in this way, the normal boundaries of propriety are dissolved. Now disarmed, the sexual energy reflected in dark arrows of distortions caused by previous repression is unleashed. And I don't know about anyone watching this video, but I've seen some shit. I went to college, and I was a pretty normal kid in high school. Wasn't afraid to go different places and see things. And this is what happens. The dark arrows of Capricorn is released when these people get intoxicated. And then they wake up like, oh, I was a different person. That wasn't me. And they all think it's funny. But this is what they need to do this is the sad part. This is what they need to do to discover these things. Sexuality becomes a vehicle through which these emotional needs are accessed through the intensity of the sexual exchange, an intensity based on duration and or sexual frequency. The emotions come to surface. Once the intensity is released through the act of physical orgasms, the harbor of emotional safety and need is found in each other's arms, at least for a while. And he's talking about healing, becoming healed through all this process. It's so funny because we think we're normal. This is like so far from normal. It's quite disturbing, actually. As the Mars and Capricorn soul grows older, their life force and their sexual energy becomes stronger. This occurs as the doors of the inner prison are progressively unlocked. As their life evolves, the Mars and Capricorn soul must embrace its opposite, Cancer. It's changing the nature of their inner self-image, thereby their egocentric structure of their consciousness. Is imperative for them to reflect on all causes that they have led that have led to a cumulative state of guilt and a negative self-image that this produces. By so doing, these individuals be able to see the causes of their emotional restriction and deep fear of vulnerability. I'll tell you what happens. I'll tell you what really happens in this consensus. They have families, and their families break down that family structure of having children. The children, especially women or young girls, the wife breaks down the stoic self-image of Capricorn. But it does not typically does not break down all that repression that I was talking about in many other ways. It just makes them more sensitized to women, particularly nurturing family and things like and children. That's all it does. It doesn't really, from what I've seen, it doesn't really take away all those repressions and the things about the closed doors and things I talked about earlier. That still exists. That's still there for most of these people. This persona has been used to control their deep inner emotional essence, which fears false judgment or persecution. That part there. They still have fear of false judgment and persecution. Because what they're doing, what they're experiencing, everyone else is experiencing. So there's no fear of false judgment. As a result, the deep inner fear of losing control manifests as a desire to control everything in order to feel secure and to have a sense of authoritarian power. Yet deep within these people is a desire to lose control, to be nurtured and taken care of someone or something. The Cancer polarity demands that they learn how to safely access these desires and needs, and not only be a whole person, but to evolve. Thus, the issue of safety that will allow this growth to occur becomes paramount. So personally, it potentially allows them to lose control sexually in their own environment, in their safe and sustainable home, so to speak. And that's how they learn. Albert Einstein, Mars and Capricorn, some famous people. David Bowie. So, look forward to Mars and Aquarius, where it gets real fun. And thanks for watching.